Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah, there is a suggestion from someone. Let's just continue. No problem. We'll continue with that. We have few minutes left, sir. Better to start another class. Somebody is saying better to start in another class. Somebody is saying let's continue. We still have a class. Okay, what we will do is we will just, uh, let us briefly look into the events because that is going to be helpful for you uh, in your internal also. And then let us cover a few points with respect to events and then wind up the class. So in last class, a long time back, almost 2 months back, we have the last topic was the events, and in that we have seen on-click event. Now, JavaScript is an event-based language. So anything which happens on a web page, for example, this is the web page we have created. So anything that happens on this web page, uh, I mean, uh, whether I'm typing any number or whether I'm selecting a checkbox, like for example, here in this case, department, I'm selecting computer science, or I select another option here, and then if I'm trying to type a multi-line comment and all, and then even clicking the buttons. These are all events, which is all these events are happening inside a web browser. Not only clicking an event or typing something, but even when I'm moving my mouse, even that's an event which is occurring. Now, there are several purposes why we have events and what are the uses of those events. Like, for example, uh, we may want to, when I'm typing something here, some numbers I'm typing, it says roll number. Now, when I lose the focus, for example, still my cursor is inside this text box, and the name, that is the second text box. When I click on the second text box, there is an event happening. That is uh, an event wherever whichever text box I'm right now in is known as a focus event, which is no it's called as on focus event. Like when we are clicking a button and clicking a clear button, there is an event occurring. So we have written an event we have used an event on click. The same way, when we select an element or a control or a component in the on a web page, it's a event there. Now, this event, when it is selected, it's known as on focus. That is your current focus or the cursor is on that control. Then, when I when I after typing something in this control, or even if I don't type it and then come to the next control, what happens is now the on focus event is on name right now. And what happened to the earlier uh, place from where the earlier control, earlier element from where the cursor has come from? That event will become on blur. So on focus is when a component is selected, and on blur is when the component is loses its focus. So that is, these two are events. So what I was saying is, now events are helpful. There are several purposes for these events. Now have events are helpful. One way is when I'm typing a roll number here, and when I lose this focus, that is, and I come to another focus. Another element is selected as a focus. If I want to evaluate that roll number, then I can do it at that time. Not only that, when you may have seen several on several websites that when you go to uh, some, some image, that image automatically gets enlarged. So that is also an event. So how is a web browser knowing that you have reached certain region? That is, it tracks your mouse. So the mouse pointers is also tracked. So, and sometimes what happens is if you come down or bottom of the page, you get an image or you get a hyperlink so that when you click that, you can directly go to the top of the web page. So these are all events, and the purpose of events is to make the website interactive. Now, what we are going to focus here, as far as the web programming is concerned, we will be focusing more on the events through which we can validate a web page. We can check, validate in the sense we can check whether the data entered by the user is in proper format or not. Now, validating here, it doesn't mean that whether a roll number is typed, it's a correct roll number or not, whether the phone number is typed, whether it's a correct phone number or not. Validation in the sense whether it is in correct format or not. For example, name can be any length, and you can have any, number of spaces within the name. But can we have a special characters in a name? We cannot have exclamation in a name. So I can't have my name as SYED and say dollar, or I cannot have my name and say hash. So there are certain validations which needs to be checked, and certain uh, the element, the input which user gives should be in certain format. So that is the main focus of using JavaScript in web programming is. Then the next thing is, suppose if this password you have entered some, let's say, some characters, and this password we have entered some characters. So the purpose of having password and confirm password is to check whether these two passwords are same or not. Then when the user says register, it proceeds to store it in a database or whatever computation has to be done. Now, even here, how do we know? So we have to retrieve this the element. We have to, from this element control from this element, we have to retrieve the content. We have to retrieve the content from this, and then compare those two contents. So how do we do? HTML doesn't provide all this. So we do it using JavaScript. So here, let us come back to this program. Now, this web page, we have already, using the same web page, which the forms web page, which we have created in HTML part. Now, there is nothing new over here in all these statements, which are all from the previous stuff itself. Even these statements, except that we have added an on-click. So on-click is an event. We have to have a handler for this event. Handler in the sense, when an event occurs, the handler provides the solution for that event. So handler is actually a function which we try to write it our own. So on event, through this on click event, we are trying to actually say that when this event occurs, use the event handler. That is, event handler will be using process as the function, and this is our defined function. It's not hard and fast rule that you have to use process itself. I can use anything. I can say, let's say validate, valid. I can say valid, but I have to write a function myself for valid. So here, since we have written a function known as within JavaScript, obviously JavaScript starts within the script tag and closes. Will be within this closing script tag. So here, since I have written a process as the function itself, so over here we are calling that function. And it's not only that the handlers can be functions. Handler is actually some part of a code that has to be executed when that event occurs. So when a register button is clicked on this web page, when we are trying to click the register button over here, register button. So when the register button is clicked, it is actually executing this statement, this JavaScript statement, that is process. Now this statement is actually calling a function. So all these statements within this function will get executed. Now, as I said, this is not an it's not that it should be a function itself. It is actually the statement or statements which has to be executed when the event occurs. So, for example, here you can see on click is there. Now here we are not calling our written, our user defined method. Here we are saying window.alert. That is, window is an object like a document. Window dot, it has a method alert. This is a predefined uh, function there, method there. So window dot alert, and we are just parsing some string over here. Let's say data will be lost. Let's say data will be lost. So this is only one statement here. There's only one statement here. So, but if you have to execute number of multiple statements when on-click event occurs, that is when we are trying to, when the user is trying to click the clear button, then obviously we cannot write multiple statements here. Though we can do it using semicolon and start writing the statement, but that's not the right way or a feasible way of doing it. So when multiple statements has to be executed, we try to create a process as the we try to create a function actually. In this case, over here we are saying process and calling that function. So this is how events are handled. That is, we have to use an attribute for the input tag or whatever tag we are trying to use that event on, and then that we have to use that the statements. That is, everywhere you're going to have on, then you're going to have the name of the event, and then call the function or the statements which has to be executed when that event occurs. So this is what basically about on click event is, which is calling process, and here we have the process as one of the function. Now let us declare define a new function. The function is defined using a function as the keyword, and then I'll just say function as test. It will not, let us not say that it has any arguments, and sorry, it doesn't use any parameters. And within this, what I'll do is I'll just use an alert box, and let's say um, this is test. Let's say this is test. So this function I've just created this function. Now it has only one statement, alert. This is test. Now this function test is defined, but will not be executed until unless it is called. So what we will do is we will try to use a different event. We have seen this on-click event. We will try to see event known as focus. I'll just write it here. We will delete later. The event is known as focus. This focus event, we will apply. It works on input tag, like how click event is working on input tag. Even focus works on the input tag. Now, what we will do is we will try to look at this event for this. Let me just clear this data. We will look at this event for the roll number text box, for this roll number text box. So roll number text box, I'll just roll number text box is created over here. This is the roll number text actually, and that's we're using the input text. This is the place where we have created. This is how we created the roll number. So here, what I'll do is I will use. Let me increase the font size. I think it's hardly visible. Okay. Yeah, now it's fine, I suppose. It's much better now. So this is the roll number field, and with this roll number field at the end, always remember when you're trying to handle an event, when we try to process the event is focus, but we have to use on focus. So on focus will be used as the event here, and here we will call test. Test. Here we will call test. So remember, at this place we are using on click. That is for your submit button. That is for your submit button. Now at this stage we are using on focus. Now this on focus is working on the roll number. It's working on roll number. So you can have different events, or you can have different event handlers, or you can handle different events in the same web page. So let us save this and let us look at what happens. Just let me refresh this. Now I'll click here. Okay, you can see this is test is displayed. Why? Because once I get the focus, if I'm clicking on name, I'm not getting anything. There's no event handling because I have not handled that event for name text box. But the same cursor, when I get the focus on the roll number, immediately it says this is test. So what I can do is instead of this is test, I can simply pass the. Let us do this way. We will use a parameter here. Uh, Let us say. Um, what do we say? Let's say S as the parameter, and alert. What we will do is we will pass S itself. And here I'll say not test. Let us give this name of this method as prompt, not prompt. And let it be test itself. Doesn't matter. Let us come down. Over here, what I'll do is in this when I'm calling here, I'll pass string. So this is for roll number. So let us say please enter roll number in, let's say, in proper format. This is the prompt I want to give it, or an alert I want to give it. Tell it to the user whenever a roll number is selected. So just let me save this file, and then let us refresh this file. And so roll number is there. So I'm on name, nothing happens. I'm on password, nothing happens. I'm on phone, nothing happens. When I click roll number, what happened? It's not working. So there might be somewhere I made some mistake. Just let me clarify that. Where is it? Test I'm calling. What have I done? There is a mistake. The script has not loaded, so that's not working. So uh, let me just look at what is happening here. There might be some error when I'm trying to display. Just let me look at the code. Where is it? How do I called it here and then semicolon is there? Fine, no problem. With semicolon. Then what is happening here? Uh, okay. Here I have a problem. What I did is uh, this is fine. Where is it? This is fine. I'm passing the argument as a string over here. this argument I'm passing as a string. Obviously, we have to use a single quote here, and then like how we did it in this case of window alert, we use this one. That is fine. There's no problem because we can use in JavaScript single quotes or double quotes. We can use, doesn't matter. Here, when then my here I am using var over here. It's not just because I don't have to declare parameters. Parameters, if I just use a name, it's more than enough for that. So let us execute this one. So I had made a mistake here. I called using like declaring variables. I have mistakenly typed var over here. So let me just save this program and then refresh. Now then, if I click here, now you can find on roll number when have clicked, it says please enter roll number in proper format. So when at the time when the focus is done, it says that. So just let us look at once more. So when we are focusing on this, it says it gives the user an alert. The same way we can write another event. I mean, handle another. For example, phone number is there. So when a focus is given on the phone number, I want to tell the user that it should be 10 digits phone number. So what I can do is I can reuse this event where I mean this handler, that is test function, because I am passing string itself, but we will pass a different string. So this is the phone number part, and so this is the input for the phone number. At the end, what we will do is I'll just use on focus itself, on focus event itself. So here we are having that on focus event, and this on focus event we will use test. And so instead of passing, I mean here we said that please enter. I'll say here phone number is exactly is 10 digits length. So I'm making use, and this should be in a single quotes. This should be in single quotes. So what I'm trying to do is I have on focus the two different events. It's a focus event also, but it's happening on two different controls. One is happening on the roll number, the other one is happening on the phone number field. And I'm using same function, calling same function, but passing different string for validation, or for, I mean, just having an interaction with the user. Let us save this one and then execute. Now, if you can find, if I click roll number, I say please enter roll number proper format. Name, nothing is happening because I have I have not used any event for that. Then when I click on phone number, you can say that this is a different message being displayed to the user, though the event is focus itself, as well as we are trying to call the same function test. But here we are trying to say phone number is 10 digits or should be 10 digits. Now all this is done. This is how focus works. I mean, whenever a control is selected, it's a focus will be on that control. Now this is done. Focus happens when you're entering, or when the control is on focus, and then once you the handler works, then once we come out of the handler, then that is, suppose if we have to validate when user, after user types something. So this is what we are doing it before user is inputting any value. So we are just giving a messages, alert messages there. But what if a user, I mean, if I'm typing roll number, so instead of typing, let me say, instead of typing 1604, then something like 20, 733, and some 500. Now, should I type it in this way, or should I tell the user to use hyphens in between? So it depends upon your choice. Now, what happens is, when a user, you just say user is entering a roll number in this format, and you don't want this. You want everything to be in proper, what do you call, without any hyphens. You want the roll number without any hyphens. So if you want to validate this at this moment itself, that is, once roll number is typed and when user comes to the next, selects the next control, that is name, when he selects the next control name, so when we come out of the roll number field, I want to have a validation here. So what do I do? As we have a focus event, there is another event known as blur. Blur event occurs when the user is away from the focus. When a focus is taken off, then the blur event occurs. So what we will do is, in this one, uh, on focus, I was for roll number, I was saying please enter roll number in proper format. So the same output, we will do it, but not on focus. When focus is lost, blur. So the event we will, here we will be using the attribute as on blur, on blur. Let us save this and let me refresh this page. And then I'll just say 1604 something as 2733, and what am I doing? This 500. Now still focus, the cursor is blinking here, still the focus is on this control. Now when I click on name, this roll number has lost its focus. So blur happens when the focus is taken away and the focus is lost. So when I'm clicking on name, when I select the other one, you can see that please enter roll number proper format is correct. So now this event is occurring when we are out of focus. So it will be on blur. So there is a blur event here. Now, whether here we are just for sake of simplicity, I've just displayed please enter roll number proper format. But actually what you have to do here is you have to check, retrieve the string and check whether there hyphens occurs or not, or whether there are any other special characters or not. Because what we said is we have to have the same, the roll number for every student in the same format, and that without any hyphens. So all those, there should be a validation purpose, there. So that validation will happen in the test, or we can write another, function for that. But suppose for at this stage, assume that we have test as the function. So in this test function, we have to retrieve, as we are retrieving using document.getElement by ID. We have to retrieve that the value what user has typed. Then we need to use certain thing known as patterns. Now we cannot patterns. The purpose of using patterns, or why we have patterns, is we said that the format, the roll number should not have hyphens. So that means the roll number doesn't have hyphens, that means these are 6, and then you have 6. So your roll number is, basically 12-digit number. So in your test, I can check whether if I enter, if I have a hyphen here, what happens is the number of characters increases. So one way is for me to check whether it's 13 digits or not. Sorry, 12 digits or not, because now it's becoming 13 digits. So that's one way, but that doesn't suffice the entire requirement, because even though they might be 12 character here, some of them may not be. Instead of 0, I might type O. So some of the characters might not be legit characters there. So we cannot start using if statements, if else statements, and check for every other possibility. So to do this, what happens is there is a concept known as pattern matching, and that pattern matching is done through regular expressions. That is completely entire different topic, and we have to spend a whole session on pattern matching itself. And that but the concept of pattern matching is not just limited to JavaScript. Pattern matching is like mathematics. Now, if you have to add two numbers, the same plus thing works. Or if you have to compute logarithm, then the same formula works. Whether you develop it in C++ or whether you do it in Java, whether you do it in any Python or any programming language. So even here, pattern matching is just like it's a universal concept. This is not limited to JavaScript. It's a universal concept. So in pattern matching, we actually have certain characters which has to be used in sequence, and certain syntax is there so that we can check every possibility using that expression, using that pattern. So that we have to dedicate an entire class to that. That's what next week we'll be covering that. But anyway, we have to do that. This type of validation, especially we have again. This is one is roll number part. If you have an email, then email you have to check for a pattern that it may or may not have a dot, and then it has to have an at symbol, at the rate symbol, and then it has to have another dot preceding that, has to have a dot, and succeeding that it has to have a dot. So some text at the rate, for example, some text like saying ABC. Now here you may or may not have dot, the dot character or underscore and so thing. But when you have when at comes, you may have anything, but it must be a dot and something. Without dot, you cannot have. So this is all about patterns. Now, what we said is preceding the at symbol, we may or may not have a dot character. But succeeding the at symbol, we have to have at least one dot. So this is all about patterns and how we try to evaluate those patterns. So obviously that we will be doing, because that's the next topic itself, pattern matching and this using regular expressions. So anyway, for that is the reason I have just used a simple alert over here to show that how on focus or on blur works. But actually that's not alert which has to be given. Actually, we have to validate that when the focus is lost. That is an on blur event. So that is one part of the other two events there. Then there is the other event known as load and unload events. I just type it here. The events. There is a load event, and another event is unload event. Now this event, these events, that is load and unload events, does not work on input tag. Like for example, we have seen there were this on click. We had seen on click. On click is working on input tag. Input tag. We have over here seen on focus and on blur. This is on blur and this one is on focus. These are also working on input. But load event and unload event will not work on input. They work on the body tag. They work on the body tag. So this load and unload event works on the body tag, but the purpose is that why it works on the body, because whatever content is there within the body tags, that is opening and closing of the body tag. So whatever content is there, that content is going to be it's a viewable content. It's going to be displayed to the user. So what load event does is it it executes, or it occurs, this event occurs when the web page starts loading. When the web page starts loading, this event occurs. An unload event in the sense when the web page loses its control. That is when we leave a web page. When we close the web browser and we try to leave the web page, unload event occurs. Now, you might be wondering, why is this, how these events are helpful. Now, you might have seen when you visit a web page, uh, once you visit, everything in the background is blurred and you get a pop-up saying that register for free or subscribe, or just enter email address to subscribe for free. And this happens even before you start reading an article or even before you start browsing that website. That is, once you type the URL and that website loads, that website will still be loading and you will get a pop-up or a screen saying that register for free or enter your email address to subscribe, so and so things. So those are done using load. So this load event works, load and unload event works on body. And obviously, we have to use on. On is used everywhere, on load. And then we need to call the handler, the function there which we try to write it. So on load or load event occurs when the web page is loaded, getting loaded, or when the web page is browsed for the first time. An unload event, that is on unload, occurs. On unload event occurs when a user leaves that web page. And these two events, that is load and unload events, works only on body tag. It doesn't work on input tag. It works on body tag. And whereas the focus or your blur, click, doesn't work on body tag. It works only on input tags. So you can have multiple events on a web page, but it is not that every event can be applied for every control. So like I said, on body only, load and unload event can happen on body tag. On your input tags, we can have focus, blur, on click events. Now there is another event known as submit. There is another event known as submit. Now, as the name itself suggests, submit. This event will not work on, with submit, we also have a reset. And this event works only on when the web page is submitted. Or reset events occurs when a reset button is clicked. So you might be wondering, we have on click event, then what is the purpose of submit event? Now this on click event, using this on click or click event, we can handle individual, what we call, have validation for individual controls. But by using on submit, we can validate all the elements or all the components at a time when the complete data is submitted. And this on submit works on the form tag when the entire data is submitted. So can use on submit, and let us call the function as validate. Validate, say, let us use semicolon here. So, and then obviously we have to implement this method. So just for the time being, I'll just write this method as validate, and I will not use any parameters. And let I'll say this is validate. So this validate function will be called on when user submits its data using the submit event, or submit on submit is the handler which is calling validates, so that validate gets executed. So let us try to save this, and let me refresh this page, and then I'll just click register. That's it. There's some problem here. Okay, I haven't filled up data and all. So that thing we will try to see. This is on submit part. What happens when data is submitted? So that works in form. So on submit event or on reset, these two things are used when the entire content of the web page has to be validated before it is submitted to the place. I mean, before it is submitted for action. I mean, wherever the URL action takes you. So before the data is submitted I mean, when user is submitting the entire data, on submit event will occur, and reset event will occur. I mean, that's obviously when the content is reset. So this is the two more events which we are having. Remember, again, on submit will not work on input tags, or it will not work on body tag, because on submit, the purpose of on submit is to take the content of the entire form elements, and then once that content is submitted, then validate that content. So that is how these are the different on submit work, as well as these are the different events what we are going to have. Now, apart from this, these are the visible events what we have seen. Apart from this, what we have is just write it down. I'll just write it down over here. What we have is we have mouse events. This mouse events, as well as we have keyboard events. That is, I have told you moving a mouse from one location to the other location is itself an event. So the same way, keyboard events means typing a key. It's an event. So when I'm typing some text, that some event is happening. So browser also handles those events. So let us talk about the keyboard events there. The first keyboard event is key down. Key down means you have selected a key. You have still just pressed it. You have not released that key. So there is key down, and then there is an event known as key up. That is, you press a key, and once you lift your finger, automatically the key comes back to its original position. So that's known as key up event. Then combining these two, we have an event known as key press. We have an event known as key press. Now you might be wondering where these events occur and what is the use of these events. Now there are certain websites, for example, you cannot right click it and say print. For example, suppose if I have to protect this website, this web page from right click event, that is right click. Why right click event? Because I don't want to print this content, the entire content here. I don't want the user to print that content. So yeah, here I am using right click on a mouse, and then I can select print, which is nothing but which also has a shortcut Control P. So instead of a mouse, if I use Control and if I click P, then printing will happen. For example, it will open a printing dialog box, but I want to protect the user. I mean, I want to protect my content from getting printed. So what are we doing when you right click it? If you see, all the shortcuts for things uses control, CTRL, all uses control. So if I write an event to disable right click, user can still use control P to print it or control S to save the content. So in this scenario, we can use key down. That is, if key down, if the control key is pressed, then I can write an event that control P or control S should not work. So that is the reason we have these events. These events are keyboard events. Then we have key up. Obviously, when key is released, some event. Key press happens if this is control. I mean, if P is there, I just press P. So it is key down happens, key up happens. So I can have an event on control that if control is pressed, that is key down. Event on key down, I can check whether it is control or not, and then I can disable printing, saving, and such things. And key press, I can apply it um, I can apply it the same way, knowing that the user cannot press P with control. So that is how keyboard events are useful. Now, mouse events. How mouse events are useful is I told you in the earlier part of this class that sometimes what happens if you may have an image when the mouse goes or rolls over that image gets bigger, or you may have an advertisement and you go to that I mean small advertisement there as an image when just the mouse is hovered over that image, the ad pops up. So for that, uh, we have mouse events, and in mouse events also we have mouse down. We have another thing known as mouse up, and then we have mouse enter, we have mouse leave, and then we have mouse over, and then we have mouse out, and then there is mouse move and mouse wheel, and we have mouse wheel. So these are the number of events for mouses. That is mouse down, mouse up. This is mouse down, mouse up is nothing but you are clicking the mouse there. Click, left click is there for your mouse. Wherever that position is, your mouse is on that position. When you click that left button, your mouse down. When you release that left button, this is mouse up. Then mouse enter, mouse leave is nothing but entering a particular region, and it might be I mean any region you can define there. So a mouse enter event happens when that particular mouse enters that particular region, and when the the pointer of the mouse comes out of that region, it's mouse leave. Then mouse over is nothing but, as I told you, certain components might be there. Like for example, image is there. When a mouse goes over, over that image, mouse over event happens. When it comes, leaves that image, mouse out event happens. Then not only that, you can also have text on the text itself. When you hover on the text, mouse over event happens. When the mouse or the cursor leaves that text, region of that text, mouse out event happens. Then mouse move is there. That is the entire movement of the mouse can be tracked or handled using mouse move event. Then we have mouse wheel. Mouse wheel is nothing but every mouse has a wheel, like through which you can move up and down. So mouse wheel event is handled. The rotation of the wheel is handled through mouse wheel event. So these were all the events which we have um, as part of the event handling. Then okay, so this was all about the mouse, not the events there. Um, Several, I mean, we have seen on click, we have seen earlier, we have seen on blur, we have seen on focus, we have talked about load, unload. We have also talked about the submit, reset, as well as these mouse and keyboard events. Now, it's not necessary that every event has to be used. It depends upon your requirement, which event to use. And mostly, what happens is it is the on submit event which is used. Most of the times, on submit event is used when the entire data gets submitted. So that was all about the different events. Then we have seen, uh, like for example, on focus event. This on focus event. Let's also write on focus here. On focus event. This, as well as we have here we have on click event. Now, as I said, there can be multiple events that we can have occurring on a web page for different elements or components there, text fields, buttons, different events. And here, focus is the same event, but this is happening on different controls. One is the roll number control, the other one is the phone number control. In the same way, here also we have on click, that is click event handling happening on two different controls. One is the button, submit button. The other one is the reset button. So one is the register button, the other one is clear button, which is submit and reset. So same event is happening on multiple uh, controls. But can we have multiple events on the same control? Like here itself, for example, roll number is there. I'm using on focus for roll number. Now I want to use on focus also, as well as on same roll number, I want to use on blur also. That is, I want to use multiple events on a single control. In this case, it is the roll number field. So multiple events. That is on focus also I want to use. I also want to use on blur. Is it possible? Yes, it is possible. It is absolutely possible. The only thing is we cannot use it this way because we cannot have another thing known as when so on focus is there, we cannot have another event called as on blur. If you have on blur, if you have to do, you have to use a single event here. But if in case if you have to do use multiple events, then we need to register those multiple events in the JavaScript code. In the JavaScript code, that is, in this code, within script tags, we have to register those events on that particular ID. That is, in this case, the ID is role. So on that role ID, we have to register particular events. So just as a what do you call? I mean, as a sample, what we will do is we will try. I'll just show you how to register that. I mean, how to use that. We will use this way. I mean, we are within the script function itself. So just as an example here, what we have is we have the ID as uh, what is the ID? Role over here. Role is the ID. So what I'll do is we will declare a variable, and let us call this variable as role var equal to. Now I can use document then get element by ID, and within this I can call this ID which is role. Now here I have retrieved this element. After retrieving this element, what I will do is I'll use ROLL, the name of this element, dot. I'm registering the events here. Now instead of here calling on focus, I'll just say over here var dot on focus, var on focus, and obviously this method, focus method, is using a variable, so we'll have s as the variable. This is the parameter. So before this, on focus is the event. On focus is the event dot equal to, because I'm registering multiple events, so equal to. Now I will not call the function the name of the function, that is we were calling the function as test. We will just say function and pass the parameters. So here on focus, on this on focus, we were using test and passing the string. So instead of that, we can use on focus, the name, because we have retrieved role var will contain the element, that is roll number, the element there, the control. So that control dot on focus equal to, there is no name on the function. We are not using the name of the function. We just say function is the keyword there. So this function expressions we have already seen when we covered functions. So function and s. Now within this function expression, I will have that statement alert s. So this is one event we have registered. In the same way, suppose I have to on focus, I have to register another event. I will use role var, because that's the variable I have, which represents the roll number component. So var dot on, let's say blur. This is second event equal to function. I'll pass some argument s, and then over here within this we can have another. I can use alert, or I can use a different text here. Doesn't matter. So not only that, instead of s, I can directly have it. Please, I can directly say please enter roll number in upper format. I can have it here itself. And I over here in this function, let's not use s over here. On blur, I can say that some, what do you call, text or some message I can provide it to user. So this way you can see that when we are using this roll number, this is the input roll number. This roll number input, we will not be using on focus here. Not be using on focus. We just have this roll number whose ID is roll, and then we retrieve this roll number ID in the JavaScript using document.get element by ID, and we have the variable role, and using that role variable dot on focus and on blur functions we will define. So now what happens is a different, I mean, you will be able to handle multiple events. This way, you are going to handle multiple events on the same control. So this is how single event can, single control can have multiple events. Or you can also have multiple, controls having the same event. So that's all I suppose. We have with respect to the event handling part, and then so mm, so next. So this is what was all event. So we have lastly, just to wind up this class, we have earlier we had seen on click. Now in this class we have seen on blur, on focus, on submit, on reset. Though we will look at on submit, which is most frequently used for web programming. On submit part, we will use it in the. We will also look into detail of on submit in the later classes. With once we, cover the regular expressions, or once we cover the pattern matching part. So there also we will be looking at the submit on submit event. Then we have also seen mouse events. What all mouse events we have, or what all keyboard events we have. So don't worry about mouse events and keyboard events. Events and keyboard events only work. There is only theoretical part. Nobody has ever asked program with respect to an exam. I'm telling you, nobody has ever asked program with respect to your mouse event or keyboard event. But definitely for submit, on submit, or for click and blur and focus, they may be programs. And on submit is usually used, frequently. That event is used frequently because in web programming, the major part is to handle the data or validate the data before it is sent to the web server. So I think that is all we have in today's class. Any doubts or any other questions? If it's not there, then we can wind up this class. Anyway, just remember that whatever we have seen today will not be there in your internal. Obviously, it's going to be there for your external, but not for this internal, which is going to be there, tomorrow, or I think it is there on tomorrow. And one more thing. Your internal will be, I suppose everyone has accepted the invitation for the Google Classroom. And yesterday I have also uploaded some of the material, textbook material and part as for your reference, which may help you in your exams. So the exam is conducted using the same classroom. So I think we will wind up this today's class. You're welcome. Thank you. You